All right, you're live.
Good evening and welcome to the City Council Workshop. Tonight is Monday, July 14th, 2025. It is 5:20. We have a number of items on the agenda. We have present at the table Councillor Beck, Councillor Fournier, Councillor Tremble, Councillor Fish, Councillor Hawes, Councillor Mallor, myself, Councillor Dean. We're joined by Jen Gunderman, Director of Health and Human Services, and our City Manager, Carolyn Lear. And first up, we have an update on the HIV outbreak in the area.
Yes, thank you again. Jen Gunderman, Director of Bangor Public Health and Community Services. I come to you today with an update on the HIV outbreak. There's been a few things that have happened over the past few weeks, and there's definitely been a little bit more media attention to the HIV outbreak. So I thought it was a good time to give you an update and to let you know what we're doing at the department. We are at a total number of 26 cases over now, a 20-month time period. As a reminder, the Bangor area usually gets about new cases a year. And 26 cases represents the number of people that have tested and tested positive. We have, by observation, by understanding this disease, there are more than 26 cases, most likely in our community. There are challenges to testing. Some of it has to do with stigma. Some of it has to do with fear of knowing what the test result is. And some of it has to do with a population that struggles to survive, that getting an HIV diagnosis could just be another thing that's really hard for somebody to accept, to navigate, and get care for. So while the number is 26, we are definitely operating as a collaborative with community partners that it's more than 26 and working really hard to make sure that people are able to get access to testing. As of the end of June, the Regional Medical Center at Loopback has ceased providing HIV medical case management services. I cannot begin to describe to you what a significant blow this is to our community. For those of you that may remember, just a little background, HRSA, the federal government, HRSA provides HIV medical case management funding in what's called Ryan White Part C. That funding, for some reason, I'm not even with all my years of doing public health in the state of Maine, that funding always came to Regional Medical Center at Loopback. And then they subcontracted with Health Equity Alliance to do the work. Health Equity Alliance went away. Regional Medical Center at Loopback took it on for Aroostook, Penobscot, Piscataquis, Hancock, and Washington counties, with a total of about 140 to 150 cases on their caseload. For reasons that Loopback made, they decided that they were no longer going to provide that service. So right now, there is no Ryan White Part C provider of HIV medical case management for 5 counties in the state of Maine. Other Ryan White Part C provider, for example, is Freeney Peabody out of Portland, who provides a lot of services for the other half of the state, as well as New Horizons in the Augusta area. HIV medical case management is provided in 2 different ways. For anyone who gets main care, Section 13, I believe it is, main care is billed. For anyone who doesn't have main care, that's when the Ryan White Part C pays for their funding. Right now, we're in conversations with Maine DHHS, Maine Care, Maine CDC, and our community partners to understand how we're going to deal with this in the short term and how we're going to deal with this in the long term. What we know is that about 140 and 150 people who had some stability in their life with HIV medical case management don't have that anymore. And that is concerning, not just because we care about people, but within the context of this outbreak. So more information to come. My understanding is that we'll be having some conversations based upon what came out of the Opiate Settlement Committee meeting this week to see how we can step into this space. I've been in conversations even today with Maine Care and Maine CDC to understand how we can move forward appropriately.
So who allocates the Ryan White funds? I mean, if somebody else wants to pick up those 5 counties, who determines?
So that's the $1 million question right now. No pun intended, but it's the federal government, it's HRSA. So the federal government,
So
provides
it
the
doesn't flow
funding.
through Maine CDC. It comes
No,
right
it doesn't. It comes right from the federal government. And I do know in talking with Maine CDC, they're trying to figure out what HRSA is going to do. Are they going to put it out to bid? Are they going to wait for the next federal budget? That is completely unknown. And right now we need to operate that those funds aren't there.
So when Lubec contract with Heal, was Heal just doing this community? What area did Heal do?
He'll cover the whole.
They did the whole
5
5 counties.
They
Okay.
did.
I mean, if somebody were to get it again, would it be something we might do in Penobscot, Piscataquis counties or?
So I don't know if you remember this, but I actually came to you and you all approved when Heal was coming to the end of their term. Regional Medical Center at Lubec put out a call for letters of interest. We submitted with your approval, a letter of interest to Penobscot, Piscataquis County. They came back and told us they wanted one entity to cover the whole 5 counties. We felt as though that was inappropriate for us because we didn't know the resources, right? Even if we were getting the funding for it and it didn't cost the city, we couldn't do that in good faith. It would have been a disservice. So we'll see what happens. As you know, the federal budget, it's a day-by-day situation. Right now, we have to operate, and if my understanding is correct, and it's very confusing because there's many different parts of Ryan White, the people who will be impacted very much are people who need Ryan White services, or more than likely people who are not on main care. So when you become a Ryan White HIV medical case management provider, you also use main care Medicaid funds. It's the way you create your financial stability. So more to come on that. Really concerning, really devastating, really a setback for us.
How's the funding when Heal, what's the timeline? Were there some funds released, no funds released? So it went from Heal, and I think they closed around the end of the year or so. And then Lubec said that they would take it over. Was there a portion of the funding they got? No funding? At what point in this juncture did they decide not to do it? What happened to the funds? Were they then pulled back? And so are there less funds now?
Those are all really wonderful questions that we have no idea because it was all federal funding. So we weren't, my guess, knowing how federal funding works, is my guess is that they've used the funds in alignment to this point, and there's probably funds left over that they've had to give back for the rest of the fiscal year. I'm guessing the fiscal year starts on October 1st. That's usually the federal fiscal year. And then another set of funds would be available. So my best guess is that they handed back over to the federal. So when Heal closed, they had to give back their funds that they didn't use to Lubec. Lubec now closes. They have to give whatever funds weren't used back over to the federal government.
Thank you.
Yeah. Challenges to responding to the outbreak and determining long-term solutions have included, as I mentioned, the hesitation to testing when people don't know their status. It increases the risk of transmission, increases the risk of serious illness for somebody. Barriers to medication adherence. We are seeing some small successes there. The partnership between Northern Light and PCHC has just been phenomenal to meet people where they're at for medication. There's increasing numbers of people who are getting virally suppressed. The complete lack of HIV medical case management that I just spoke about, ongoing community stigma, and really the lack of resources. I know that's something that we use quite often to talk about barriers. Every organization involved has had to stretch themselves beyond with absolutely nothing more. No money, no people. Like we are stretched, and we are not the only ones. So how we're currently involved, education, we developed at the beginning of the outbreak a palm card that provides basic information and a list of resources with contact information. We continue to update that as the resources get updated. We've requested educational materials from Maine CDC that are specific to the impacted population. We have plenty of educational materials for general population, but we don't have materials that are specifically geared towards people who are experiencing homelessness, who are experiencing injection drug use. Having educational materials that match the health literacy and the issues of the population are so important. We're still waiting for that information.
Jen, I have a medical question.
Oh, sure.
It used to be that if you contracted HIV, you almost always came down with AIDS in a certain amount of time. Now we have a lot of medications that will help us. Those that are not receiving these medications, is there a longer conversion rate? Because we don't hear about AIDS as much as we did.
Great point. It is a long time before someone progresses to AIDS. And the way that's determined is by their viral load count and their CD4s, their white blood cells. And you go through many stages. What I have learned from our clinical community is that could take 10 years. I mean, depending upon the person, it could take 10 years to get to that point. So what we're seeing right now with people who aren't on medical adherence, they're not, say, at risk for developing AIDS in the next year if they've just been recently transmitted. But if they don't get that medical care, it will potentially, is a high likelihood of potentially evolving to that way.
Right.
With the cases, you said typically we saw about two a year. And this 26 is in its same time frame. Is there any other outside influences or any other oddities that might have contributed to it? Have we seen, we had a large population in the encampment, larger than we've ever seen. So is part of it from outside individuals coming in, perhaps bringing that and the cluster explosion, or is it that we didn't have strong enough preventive measures right out of the gate, or a little bit of both?
All of the above. We had the perfect storm here. We have a population of people experiencing homelessness, injection drug use, mental health barriers, and infrastructure that wasn't supporting it. HIV dropped off the radar of, public health because we were dealing with so many other things. It was everything that came together over time that contributed to the situation. Yeah. And we are trying now to build a system, right, to support people who've been newly diagnosed and not get in the situation again. We're hoping that we can teach other parts of the state, because other parts of the state, they've got ingredients the same way that we do, and they're at high risk for the same thing happening.
Thank you.
Council Fornia?
I'm just thinking of the financial end of things. With HEAL dropping out and now Quebec dropping out, was it principally driven by the Ryan White funding or lack thereof?
No,
No,
the Ryan White funding's been steady.
that's been steady.
We don't know what led to the decision for Lubec. And we continue to provide presentations and information sessions as requested. So we are still doing some education testing. I just want to clarify, there's been a little bit of inaccurate information floating about our testing. We get two different types of HIV tests. We get free HIV tests from the state. We always provide those free. Those free tests are for people who are at high risk. That includes everybody who's even closely associated to the population at risk for our outbreak, and then some. We charge $40 for people who are at low risk, who come into our clinic. They just want to do an annual test. They have other reasons why they may want to test for HIV. They may not want to go to their primary care provider. We charge them $40 to cover the cost of the test and the cost of our time. If cost is ever a barrier, even if it's someone at low risk, we would do something to make sure that barrier was taken away. So our outreach testing, our testing in the clinic is free for people who are at high risk, and then even medium risk. We also offer an incentive from some of our grant funding for people who are at high risk to get tested, because the research has showed us when offering an incentive of a gift card, it can increase the likelihood of testing. In addition, we have coordinated the distribution of free HIV self-tests. It is not ideal for someone to be taking a test on their own, because we want to make sure they have the support, whatever that result is. Franny Peabody sends us free HIV self-tests through a grant that they get. We put a sticker on it saying, if you have questions about your results, you can call these places. And then we give them to individuals, we give them to organizations, both the emergency departments in our community, St. Joe's and Northern Light, give them out to patients who are at high risk. We do that completely free. So we are covering as many bases as possible to get testing increased. And then if any organization called us and said, we'd love to offer free HIV testing, we would be working with them to set up that time. There are a number of other community partners who are also doing that. For care and support, because HIV medical case management isn't happening as like a comprehensive service, we have been actually helping with pieces. For example, completing Ryan White Part B paperwork, which includes the ADAP program that gets somebody free medications, their monthly food card, any of the paperwork that's needed, we've been there to help complete that. We are continuing to work with Wabanaki to be part of an enhanced syringe service provider at their space. Jenny Doyle, our public health nurse, has been working to set up clinic space so that people can come in and get HIV, hepatitis C, STI testing, wound care. We're gonna have a telehealth medicine room that they can telehealth with PCHC or Northern Light. So we're looking to have that collaborative space.
That's a new spot on Hancock Street.
That's a new space on Hancock, yeah. Funding to support that one-stop shop. We're looking for funding. We're going to be applying for the Gilead grant that you all approved that we could apply for. Just been a matter of time to get that application in. We are bringing on our infectious disease specialist, and I am so excited for this. So out of our infrastructure funding from Maine CDC, we have hired and Masters in Public Health level. Her name is Elizabeth. She'll be coming on board with us the middle of August, and she'll be helping with a lot of this work, as well as some of the other infectious disease topics like mosquito-borne disease, measles, to help us with some collaborating in the community. And the last thing that I will mention is we continue to do outreach. We work with our programs in public health and community services to link people to housing. The one thing that I didn't mention is we have all now also launched a medication adherence incentive program. Again, based upon the research, incentives play a big role. And we are starting to enroll people that are struggling with medication adherence. Every time they get an injection medication and lab work, they get an incentive. When they reach viral load suppression, they get a larger incentive. And then there's a maximum amount of that's sort of allocated to a person. So we're helping to keep people motivated. More than anything, it will keep people connected to somebody along their journey. So upcoming things that we're looking at, there's a lot of research that shows that social networks can be important in helping to increase testing, spreading correct information. We are looking to, I know that there's been some chatter about us not having anything on our website or on social media. That has been low hang, like that has been like, I'll be honest, at the low end of our priority list, because we have been trying to do as much direct care as possible. We have been in communication with people who can offer us some guidance on building a thoughtful communication plan that we can be consistent and offer comprehensive and accurate messaging. We're going to be looking at how we can play a role in our case navigation management. And one of the things that's sort of down on our list too is there a way that our clinic can provide pre-exposure prophylaxis on a regular basis, and what that could potentially look like in a financially sustainable way. That is the HIV outbreak. One other quick thing that I just wanted to mention, as some of you probably saw, the federal reconciliation budget was passed. It eliminated SNAP education. That is 3 of our staff members. We are keeping our fingers crossed that some things could potentially happen in the federal budget to add it back in. We're going to be doing some advocacy, but this is another major blow to our community. SNAP education provided nutrition education in our schools and in community to people on SNAP benefits. And it is 3 of our staff who have been amazing in this work.
So that's the end of September it ends?
We have not received any final words at this, any final word at this time, so I can't really say.
Anyone have any other questions or comments for Jen?
You got your hands full.
I will be honest with you. I have worked in public health for 27 years, including Peace Corps volunteer, global health, HIV surveillance, and some of the hardest parts of our world. Right now is the biggest challenge of my professional career.
Yeah.
And I am incredibly grateful for the team that I have. I couldn't do it without them. They give me hope every day.
Thank you. Good work.
Great to hear. Thank you.
We appreciate it all. Thank you.
Next up, we have an update on Teresa's place. We are joined by Jenna Jones, the homeless response manager.
Hello, thank you so much for the opportunity to chat with you all again. It's been some time since I've been here. I do have a couple of good updates for you this evening, which I'm very excited to share. We have some forward momentum on Teresa's place. I know we have all waited a pretty considerable amount of time, right? For a period of time, we were anticipating that this site was going to open all 41 units at the end of 2024. And here we are, right? No units are currently accessible. However, the certificate of occupancy has been approved, and that was one of the biggest hurdles facing this project up until now. This means that the facility, CHCS, and the property management agency, the Housing Foundation, can move forward with the remaining pieces of all of sort of the red tape elements of finally leasing folks up in this space. This includes the main housing bits, that will include an inspection as well. It will also include main housing having to approve of all of the applications that have already been sent forth for approval. These are tenants that the Housing Foundation has interviewed, has approved, and then main housing is the final entity that gives their blessing. And then when the building is finally ready to actually have folks move in, those individuals will have already been had their lease signing taken care of and will be able to move right in. I know a number of folks are really looking forward to this opportunity. There have been a number of challenges, however, in addition to just the inspection of the building, that have caused some challenges in ensuring that all 41 of those units can be leased up upon opening. These challenges primarily relate to the funding source allocated to this project. Dollars were funneled, as I understand it, from main housing primarily through home ARP funds. These are dollars that come out of the American Rescue Plan Act. Now, what happens here through the funneling of these dollars, and because the project wasn't conceptualized as a true housing first model, which means it wasn't designed to allow traditional permanent supportive housing to take place. This is the kind of housing with supports that we know really impacts positively folks who are experiencing chronic homelessness. These are the individuals who have been outside for more than a year primarily. These are also some of the hardest folks that we have in our community to work to help support through housing. And what we anticipated with this project at the outset was that it was going to be permanent supportive housing for folks, that this project was in fact designed to support people coming from a space of chronic homelessness. Not that we anticipated that every single individual in those 41 units was going to be coming from that experience, but we did anticipate that this was going to be more of a benefit for this particular population, for whom we know we typically have to wrap a lot of supports around, right, to effectively aid that transition to stable housing. This is challenging, right? Because at this point in time, the largest barrier that folks have in making it through the interview process and being selected as a prospective tenant by the Housing Foundation is that they need to have a very pristine rental history. And what I'm hearing from the folks that I'm talking to who are providing these updates is that it's this rental history that's primarily hanging folks up. But what we know, particularly as we work with folks who have experienced or are experiencing chronic homelessness, that journey to stable housing, as I've said before, is not always linear. right? So sometimes folks can move from that space into housing and then stumble for a number of reasons, right? Maybe that placement doesn't work out, maybe it takes another shot. But what that can ultimately result in are things like evictions, potentially, money owed to previous property managers or rental companies or what have you. Now, we obviously want to create situations in which folks are primed to succeed, right? That eliminates so much additional work on the back end when those initial placements aren't successful. But to have conceptualized this project as such to support people coming from chronic homelessness, I'm having trouble understanding how we got to this point where this was the funding source that was ultimately leveraged. And I do want to stress that the vast majority of this work predates me, and the information that I've been able to glean on the project and the development up until now has largely been through email chains and updates with third parties and things like that. So I do want to preface this by saying that my understanding isn't entirely comprehensive in terms of what came before. But I will say that the community, particularly the folks, who really thought they had a chance to lease up in this place, and the amazing community support workers who are providing supports to these individuals to ultimately get them into that safe, secure space, are feeling a pretty significant sense of frustration. This results in, the considerable amount of work that individuals who are experiencing homelessness and the support teams are going through to navigate the application process, which is incredibly rigorous. It requires, I think, at minimum 3 credit references. For an individual who's experienced homelessness, this can be something that's really, really difficult to attain. So these are the kinds of barriers that folks are experiencing as they're attempting, to achieve stable and permanent housing. And what we are trying to do collectively as a community working in this field is to identify the individuals who are most likely going to have a successful opportunity at moving through this application and lease up process, right? Because no one wants to set their client up just to be denied. So now we have a better understanding, at the very least, of who the eligible candidates really are for this location. And I want to stress that there are likely still going to be folks coming from really difficult spaces, right? With prolonged periods of time experiencing homelessness who are still going to get inside in this space. And that is ultimately still a win. And I really want to stress that in all of my conversations with partners who have been leading this work, I've never gotten the impression that the reality that we're sort of facing right now with this project was born out of, any sort of ill intent or, intentional mismanagement. I think in a lot of ways, this is the way the chips fell. And this is the project that we are ultimately going to have available for our community members who still ultimately need it. That's still a win. It's still 41 units that otherwise we don't have online. And there still will be supportive services available in this facility. They just won't be the 24/7 wraparound services that tend to include supports and treatment, okay? The supports that are going to be offered are largely that. They're supportive type services. So these are things that are still incredibly important. Like, this is how you be a good tenant. Like, those types of life skills that help people better establish agency and autonomy and figure out what choices are available to them. That's still a powerful gift to give folks. Employment services, help navigating, into case management services, for example. Those are all connections that folks who do ultimately lease up in Teresa's place are still going to benefit from. They just won't have the treatment services available 24/7 in that location. But I will say our partners are working to identify workarounds to this challenge. When I had a conversation with Dale Hamilton, the executive director of CHCS, he indicated that part of the screening process for tenants for the application for Teresa's place includes now sort of an additional assessment to identify for these candidates who might be eligible for Teresa's place, what additional services could we potentially front load them with? And those do include treatment services. So we're still trying to, as creatively as possible, link as many dots as possible so that the folks who are ultimately going to be calling this place home still have the best chance of a success possible. The city's role in terms of supporting this work has largely been what we've been doing since the application was released, right? We're working to help to the very best of our ability manage the amount of work that it takes to get folks through this application and interview process. That largely looks like assistance with acquisition of vital documents. So birth certificates or, licenses, IDs, things like that, that folks are going to need in order to lease up in that space or really any space. We work to help them get those documents. In some cases, I know the city's outreach worker, for example, has been instrumental in supporting his clients getting to these applications and advocating for them, for the clients in that space as well. So in as many ways as we can, obviously kind of being on the outside of this process, we're working to streamline wherever we can. And my role particularly has been helpful in ensuring that the community of providers, those who are directly working with these folks, are as up to date on the process as possible. And I think that's another area where we've really started to hopefully alleviate some of the stress that folks experiencing homelessness and their support teams are experiencing, just by trying to keep folks better in the know. What's coming next? Do we have a timeline? How can we communicate how best to support your clients in these spaces? And what do we need to do to ensure that we're maximizing their chances of success?
Council.
The candidates that have already, I understand there's quite a few people that have already made applications and hopeful to get in. And of those, what is the focus? Are we primarily looking at, I know we're a service center for many communities, but are we primarily looking at Bangor and the greater Bangor community applicants that we're going to be servicing and helping? And my second question is, there's also some people that are struggling and coming into homelessness and nothing more other than financial problems.
Yeah.
Would they be a consideration, or is the priority of those already on house and have other medical needs and mental health needs? So is there a thought and a place for the people entering potentially homelessness?
Those are great questions, Counselor. Thank you. I would say, to answer your first question, from what I've seen in my work with the direct support teams, the vast majority of folks that are submitting applications and leasing up are folks that are very well known to us in the community. I don't get the impression, though I don't have zip code data on all of the applicants, that we have a number of folks coming from away attempting to lease up in this location. We are trying to cast as broad a net as possible, so that folks who are working in this community know that this is the spot if you believe your client might be eligible for this particular facility, that you submit that application. We unfortunately don't have the ability to control, right, ultimately who does lease up, but there's certainly enough need at this point in time in our community to be able to lease those units up quite easily, I would believe. And to answer your second question, yes, absolutely. So at present, what we know kind of anecdotally is that more folks are falling into homelessness today than we are able to exit the system. And particularly those folks who are sort of transitionally experiencing homelessness because their landlord sold their building or because their rent's gone up and they can't afford it, but who otherwise have a great rental history. Those would be prime candidates for a location like this. And we're very, very fortunate to have the position within public health with the housing stabilization and navigation position, who is able to identify those folks who are coming into this experience because of his vast network. And he's able, as I understand it, to connect those folks as well to the application process. So we are trying to implement creatively rapid rehousing efforts wherever possible.
Thank you.
Council Forney.
I know it's out of your control, but when do you anticipate Teresa's place opening?
Such a good question. I've asked for a timeline on that. And, understandably, the response that I got from Penquist is, we don't want to put a date on this. We've done that a couple of times, and having to push it out is uncomfortable for everybody, as we can understand. So what I'm doing more consistently now is reaching out for those updates and saying, hey, where are we at right now? What are things looking like on the horizon? And my contact at Penquist, Heidi LeBlanc, the COO, is very, very responsive and has been more than willing on more than one occasion to jump on a call with me so I can download these updates. I think at this point in time, conservatively, I would hope, because we have sort of initiated a request to expedite the remaining inspection that needs to be done by Maine Housing, and the approval of those 19, I believe 19 applications that have already been submitted for their approval. That we are in the home stretch. The update that I got on the actual building being ready was very, very favorable. There were only a couple of last minute things that needed to be done. And as I understand it, they might even be done by next week. So it really could be a matter of Maine Housing does their final approval process, and at the very least, those 19 that have already been identified are able to lease up and move in quickly.
I just want to emphasize something that Jenna said. So the current next step is Maine Housing
Yes.
inspection and approval. And Jenna reached out to the Maine Housing director and put some pressure on them to please expedite things and recognize how important this project is for Bangor. Once that barrier is done, whatever the next barrier is, we're going to be very aggressive in seeing how we can use our influence to hopefully make things go as quickly as possible, understanding that it's not necessarily in our control, but we do have influence. Of the 19 applicants, do they all meet the criteria?
These are applicants that have been approved by the Housing Foundation, so yes, they would have met all of their criteria, and then Maine Housing, as I understand it, just has to do the final review, signs off, and then candidates are good to go. There's a considerable amount of vetting that is done through the Housing Foundation's process.
Any other questions for Jenna?
If you don't mind, I would just like to add that while this project isn't necessarily as robust as we were hoping that it was going to be for the population that we're trying to serve, we do still have the Home for Good project that is still moving forward in this area, and that will be permanent supportive housing, 30 units that will be available. So that's still a win, right? This is a win in and of itself. It's not as comprehensive as we would have preferred, but man, those are 41 units that are going to come online soon and meet some real needs. So it's exciting stuff. Thank you all so much. You have a good night.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
And next up, we have the airport taxi grant request. Good evening.
Good evening, the Sylvester Airport Director. And today we brought in bring into the committee a recommendation to move forward with accepting and appropriating an FAA grant that is meant to fund the initial design portion of the rehabilitation of Taxiway Alpha. And this is being brought up, as you might recall from previous grants. The FAA has very strict guidelines on when they issue the grants, and a lot of it is predetermined, rather than grant is more of pre-allocated money, but the timing on issuing is usually a little bit of the issue on getting it out to you guys and to the process of getting it through committee and through council. So we are bringing the recommendation for accepting and appropriating and waiving the second reading for the appropriation, and that's it, right?
Yeah, so you'll see, it's currently listed on the agenda. It shows it going first reading, committee, and then second reading, but we're asking, and I believe Councilor Trumbull, did you talk to Dave about this? So we're gonna ask you to waive 2 readings on this.
And specifically, the reason we're asking is because to receive it, I need to sign on the grant contract by the 28th.
Yes.
And so in order for all of that timing to work, that's why we're asking that you approve it on an expedited basis.
And the grant is about $480,853 from the FAA, 12,654 met with the state, and that's the same amount that would come from the airport. So pretty hefty amount from the federal government. So
That's good. Anyone have any questions on that? Do we need to entertain a motion to add this to the?
It's on that first reading already, right?
Yeah, it's already on the agenda. So all that needs to happen now, right, is when that item comes up,
Right,
there needs to be a motion to waive.
but we don't need that motion here, it's not here.
not so many
Yeah.
later on.
Yeah.
Are there any objections to that?
No.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jose.
I believe we have a city solicitor update.
Hi, I'm Dave Stepchek, city solicitor, and I wanted to give you an update, a solicitor's update since the last time that we did this, and I just wanted to cover a few of the items that have kept us busy in the legal department lately. The first thing I wanted to let you know, good news, the legal department moved today back to the old city hall, which we're pretty excited about. We got the computers moved and we got them up and running, and the furniture is where it needs to be, and
Air conditioning is working?
air conditioning is working.
Everybody needed?
Yeah. It sounds very quiet over there right now, compared to the space here. And so we're happy about it. So if you're looking for us, don't look for us here. We're over there. The first item I wanted to just touch base with you on is the vacant building registration ordinance enforcement update. We have, as you know, a team that's working on that enforcement that includes code enforcement, CNED, legal department, and I included a spreadsheet in your materials, and I wanted to just kind of point out a few things. This enforcement under the revised vacant building registration ordinance is working. And I wanted to just kind of point out to you on the columns on the spreadsheet that where it says subtotal on the left-hand column, those were the numbers the last time I updated you. And then at the bottom where it says total, those are the current numbers. So if you notice in the first column, property is no longer vacant. That number, which there had been 31 that had become no longer vacant since we started this process at the end of 2023. Now there are 47. So since the last time I updated you, there have been an additional 16 properties that are no longer vacant that were on our vacant property list. Of those 16 properties, 6 are occupied. 3 of them have certificates of occupancy issued. 4 have been demoed. 2 are city owned now due to tax foreclosure. And then there's one dangerous building that the council ordered demolition already. So that's good news. In the last column, properties not registered. These are properties that have been identified and are on our vacant property list that are not up to date in their registration. The last time I talked to you, the number was 28. That the number is now 15. So 13 properties are now registered. There's only 15 left on the not registered list. 10 of them registered. 1 the city has legal title to. 1 a certificate of occupancy was issued, and 1 is occupied that had been on that list. And you can see up in the right-hand corner of your spreadsheet of the 15 properties that are not registered. We've been able to do this largely without litigation. There are 2 that are in the early stages of litigation. And then 3 that have complaints drafted. And so the numbers have been good and the process is working. It's a lot of letters and phone calls and discussions, and you'll see that even though under the 3rd column, properties newly identified by code department, even though the code office has newly identified 9 new properties since the last time I talked to you, because there's 40 that have been newly identified, and there were 31 last time. Even though that's the case, the properties on the vacant property list have shrunk from 75 to 68. And the properties that are registered and current have grew from 47 to 53 since the last time we talked. So I feel like that's good news, and if you have any, if you have any questions about that. Yes.
Council Point?
No questions. Thank you for doing the spreadsheet. I think I was the one pushing for that. And it shows the great progress, which is, it makes for an easy communication piece.
Yes,
So
it
thank
does. Yeah. Anybody else? I wanted to move on to the revised vacant building registration ordinance. As you know, it was recently revised by the council. 2 exceptions were created. One for a casualty event like a fire, the other one for an active building permit. And I just wanted to let you know that the legal department has drafted templates for the code enforcement office to use to send out to individuals to let them know that ordinance has been revised in that way, so that they can now register and request that the vacant building registration ordinance fee be deferred for a period of for 6 months. And so those will be going out from the code enforcement office, and wanted to let you know that I think there'll be another result there, because when they understand, and we've also talked to some people as well on the phone, and when they realize that they have an active building permit, they can register and request that 6 month deferral of the fee. Then I think that's going to be another positive jump in terms of people that are registering and staying current. The council wanted me to provide updates on homelessness and housing at my review, and I wanted to take that opportunity to let you know that let's make sure everybody knows that we have some incredible people at the city that are doing some incredible things in helping with the homeless situation. Because they're doing so well, they haven't had to come to the legal department for very many issues on that front. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to just talk about some of the people who are our homeless response manager, Jenna Jones, who just spoke with you. She's just done such an effective job. She's organized and passionate about it, and knows the people. She coordinates with with city outreach, connecting people to resources all the time. And I just one of the places that she also coordinates with is the DA's office to match people up with needed services. And these are probably, in that instance, people who may have experienced chronic homelessness and have not in the past accepted services, but in the context of coordinating with the DA's office, they may have a greater incentive to accept those services. And that is yet another way that Jenna has been helping so much in this regard. The closing of the encampment in outside the Hope House was it required tremendous effort on a lot of people. Debbie Laurie, the former city manager, she accomplished her goal in finding housing for those in Camp Hope with the help of Jenna Jones and a lot of other people. Mark Hathaway in the police department and the BCAT team. You know, when there are calls to the police, and it involves, individuals experiencing homelessness, it's the BCAT team that, responds and, they go out and, assist to, again, to, connect people with individuals who can provide them with resources they need. And the police and the BCAT team have proceeded with, a great compassion. I mean, you can't ask for more compassion and dignity. And Jen Gunderman, who just spoke with you, she and the public health team, they provide resources for the unhoused, including general assistance administration, vaccination, rental assistance to make people not homeless anymore. Housing stabilization, they work on meticulously. The convening of partners to provide solutions. Jenna Jones and Jen Gunderman are doing that all the time. And I just wanted to let people know that there are people doing wonderful work in that regard. Rob Hanscom, the park ranger, he accompanies the outreach teams to go and visit individuals who are experiencing homelessness, sometimes for purposes of on 95-degree days to make sure that they have water and are okay. The Public Works Department did a lot of work with respect to that encampment and ongoing cleaning up sites and working in that regard. And I just wanted to let everybody know that stuff is happening, and it's a lot of work and it's a lot of dedicated people. I wanted to give you an update on just the freedom. We continue to get increasing numbers of Freedom of Access Act requests. We get larger and more complex ones coming in. And so the volume of the requests and the complexity of it often requires multi-departmental coordination. And our assistant city solicitor, Grace Ennis, she's our designated public access officer. And she, although routine FOA requests can be handled by each department, she does coordinate more and more among departments and is the main communication point for many of these requests. And so the time required as the volume and complexity grows, more of the legal department's time is spent dealing with these requests. I want to give you a very brief update on the Bangor Mall Rule 80K cases that they've been set for continuation of the hearing on September 22nd. I don't want to talk about that in open session in terms of pending litigation, but we do have an executive session coming up to discuss pending litigation. There will be other Rule 80K actions on the horizon, some involving trash and junkyard issues. Wanted to let you know that the legal department is spending time on those, getting those ready to make sure that we are trying to enforcing our laws with regard to the trash and junkyard situations. There's a new process that's been developed in response to the recently revised state statute regarding tax acquired properties and the procedures that are now required under that statute. The new statute requires that the city tax acquires a property and the city decides to sell that property, it must do so through a real estate broker at the highest price at which the property is able to sell, with some complicated details going on. And the city has hired a residential real estate agent and a commercial real estate agent. The legal department has facilitated communications with both agents and assisted with negotiating their contracts. The personal property left behind at those properties, the legal department's working on a new policy in order to deal with the personal property as required by the state law, so that the acquired property with personal property inside can be dealt with appropriately and according to the law, and so that the real estate can be listed for sale. Does anybody have any questions about some of the time that we've spent?
Council Fornier.
So with Eden and Peabody essentially going away, are we looking for other firms, or are we following the attorneys that we were dealing with? Or what?
For which items? You mean in
Or
general?
whatever items?
Well, some of the attorneys that worked for Eaton Peabody are now working for Veril Dana and other firms. And so in some cases, we would follow that attorney if they were the ones that are assisting us. And in other cases, we know other attorneys at other firms.
That's fine. I was just,
Was
Yeah.
it just the employment attorney we had? Was
as far as I know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Appointment, but I didn't know if there were others.
no, I mean, it depends on the issue and the topic.
Right.
But we know a lot of
Yeah.
attorneys around. I've been around practicing for a long
Yeah,
time, and so
I
I know
know.
a lot of attorneys in
Thank
the
you.
area.
Right, anyone else? Thank you, Dave.
Okay, thank you.
We'll follow up with our city manager for an update.
All right, I wanted to start with a hiring update for the Public Works Director and Finance Director roles. Last week, first round interviews happened for both of those roles. I would say that we have good candidates. I'm pleased with the candidates that we have for both of those positions. And we're gonna start scheduling second round interviews imminently. They may already, be on the calendar. I know that they were gonna start scheduling those shortly, so I think that's good news that we have good candidates who are interested in the roles and the process is rolling. City Hall update, moving back to City Hall, still planning on having City Hall open to the public at our permanent location on August 11th. As you heard, there's already folks that are starting to move back now. And that's gonna continue over the next few weeks. People will start slowly moving back to City Hall. The last folks to move will be the people who serve the public. And they won't move until August 7th and 8th. Those are the 2 days that we expect city services to be unavailable to the public to accommodate their move back to City Hall. And then we'll reopen on the 11th with public service from our permanent location. A press release is going to go out tomorrow, alerting the public to that expected closure. And then we'll follow up with more communication closer to the actual date. I think most people don't plan their trips to City Hall 3 or 4 weeks ahead of time, so we'll remind folks that we're gonna be closed on the 7th and the 8th. Just a note about meetings. All meetings will continue to happen from this building until the 11th, so no need to start worrying about which building you're supposed to be in.
Just a question, it predates you and you might not even be aware of it, but we had a tour a couple months ago, I think, at the City Hall, and on the first floor. There was a difference in elevation there that we were told at the time was fine. Council Mallett questioned if it was ADA compliant. We were told it was. I understand it might not have been. How that was addressed or what happened there?
Since poor Carolyn was not here.
Right.
Although I've
That-
heard about this.
Yes, Assistant City Manager Courtney O'Donnell, yes, Counselor Mallor was correct. I had mentioned previously that, we did hold the people responsible feet to the fire, so to speak, and they have corrected
So
that.
how would they remedy this?
They fixed the slope,
Okay, so it's
yes.
just
so it's a
more
lot,
gravel, so.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
yep.
Anything else on the City Hall project while we have Courtney?
Yeah.
Did we ever come up with the total money that was spent on it from top to bottom?
Oh, yeah, that I don't know.
We're not quite done yet. They're still going through the punch list. We have the temporary certificate of occupancy for the second and third floor, but we're still waiting on a couple of things for the first floor, as well as working through like the AV, for example, and chambers. The security cameras have been installed, the ticketing system for the windows and all those little details. So hopefully it's a smooth transition for everyone. But I'm sure once things come to a close, we'll be able to get you that number.
All right. The next item on my list, I wanted to talk about a piece of legislation that passed in the state this last session. All the talk was about the budget, but some other interesting things passed, including the creation of a real estate property tax relief task force, which I thought that sort of piqued my interest. So it's going to have 13 voting members and 2 non-voting members, made up of tax experts, large municipalities, small municipalities. And the sort of scope of this task force is to do a really deep dive and study into the property tax system and the tax burden in the state of Maine. Sounds like something that we might care about as a city, as you can imagine. If you pull the legislation, I mean, there's a laundry list of dozens of areas that they plan on examining as part of this task force. Some of the big topics that we might care about are who's impacted by the burden most, what the impact of the property tax burden is on folks, and ways things are done in other municipalities to lessen the burden. So I wanted to make you aware that that was happening and let you know that I'm gonna monitor that task force pretty closely once it gets working. I think theoretically, in addition to gathering information, often legislation comes out of that work. And so I want to make sure that we're, having the appropriate voice in that conversation and we know what's happening if it's gonna impact us. So I'll keep you updated as that task force starts working and let you know what's going on and what we might be excited about or what we might be concerned about, as the case may be. And then the last thing on my list was, I've heard a few mentions of an airport committee and whether we should keep to our current system of sort of combining airport topics with the Business and Economic Development Committee, or whether there's a desire to go back to having an independent airport committee. I was in sort of chatting with people, it sounds like there was a reason we went to combining the 2 committees. My understanding is that it related to maybe some scheduling challenges of having an additional committee and whether there was enough material to keep an agenda going for a standalone airport committee. But that being said, it sounds like there are at least a couple folks on council that are interested in a standalone airport committee. So I thought it would be a good time to maybe start that conversation. My understanding is that the committees are actually outlined in ordinance. So the way we would go about doing that would be an ordinance change if there was a desire to do that. I, of course, have no history, so I have no strong feelings. Councilor Hawes?
We talked about it at the last Business and Economic Development Committee. It has been brought up before, and there was interest at the time to pull the airport back to its own. And then it just kind of got pushed off to the side for other things. But actually, Councilman Leonard made a motion that he'd like to see it move. I think I did second it because I believe it's a freestanding now, but it's busier. There's more information for the director to bring to our attention about the airport. It's nice to know in depth about the new, the runway things and the improvements inside the terminals. And we just felt that it doesn't get its fair shot at the end of a very long or in the middle of a very long business and economic development agenda. So we thought consensus was there to do it. I think the thought was it would go back to maybe on the night that we do GovOps. They would add that, so we wouldn't be adding an extra night to meeting nights. It would still be on the Mondays. And that's where it ended. Oh, I did ask Courtney about the process of that, how we would get it back if that was the majority.
Counselor Turnbull?
Yeah, I don't feel that strongly either way, but I'm just curious, so if there was a vote, was there a vote, if the motion and a
No.
second, I didn't,
It was
There's no
the,
motion.
it was the
There was
consensus.
no,
okay, so, yeah, just a little history, I mean, there was the airport committee years ago, and then it wasn't, they came back when we lost the Delta service, there's actually an airport committee and airport task force, this was a number of years ago when we lost Delta, and it was very successful in bringing more focus to the airport. And then I wasn't that excited when we lost the airport committee, I thought we would lose some of our focus on the airport and what was going on there, but I don't think that's happened, I think it's actually worked out pretty well, being part of BED, so I don't. At one time, I would have said, no, we need to keep the airport committee, it's very important that we focus on that, but I think being part of BED, I don't think it's lost any attention, so. I don't feel that's whatever people, the only thing I would say, I wouldn't go too far planning on it to just get a consensus if there's a majority that wants to go forward with.
Counselor Forney?
I could go either way. The airport committee met only once a month and it did meet. So I think I think the thought process was, we didn't want to be meeting, twice a week on committee week. Because then, and it does make for a longer Monday evening on certain occasions. So I can go either way, but
So where do we want to go with this? Counselor Beck?
Yeah, just, I guess, I don't recall the airport director's position on whether or not this would be helpful.
I didn't even warn the airport director that we're
Yeah.
gonna talk about this.
I
so
mean-
be fair to him.
Yeah, cause for me, that would be my biggest.
Yeah.
If the airport director says, absolutely, this is something that would facilitate my work and greatly help the airport, then I'm on board.
Counselor Fish?
I wasn't here either when there was a committee, and I think Jose does a very good job coming in, with the reports. But I would also be interested before I could make a decision because one way or the other. But I would like to know his intake. Does he feel he hasn't had appropriate time, that he has to kind of condense what he'd like to share with us because he's restricted? And would it be beneficial for an additional meeting that maybe somehow he can see us as a council better working with him and better facilitating the airport's needs? But I would be interested to see what Jose's take would be on that as well.
What do
Do you want, I'm sorry, if I may, I'd like to save the airport director. I think,
we should.
yeah, and actually I was thinking because it's a committee structure under council and ordinance related, it could also go to GovOps next week, either way. But it sounds like there is interest, we can put on a committee meeting next week, and then if that committee votes it forward, it would go through the council approval process. And that will give the airport director a little bit of time to kind of think through and get some information and stuff for next week's meeting. Even if he's not able to be there. Yeah, okay, so yeah, we'll be able to do that.
Great, thank you.
All right,
Do you have anything else?
That's all I got. I don't have any other directors to put on the spot.
Do you want?
I'll make a motion that we go into executive session, MRSA 4056E, consultation with city solicitor. And MRSA 6D. AF SCME local 926, council 93 BIA operations.
Second?
We have a motion, we have a second, we will go into executive session.
Need a roll call vote.
Roll call vote. Counselor Beck?
Yes.
Counselor Fournier?
Yes.
Counselor Turnbull?
Yes.
Counselor Fish?
Yes.
Counselor Hawes?
Yes.
Counselor Mallett?
Yes.
I am a yes, we are in executive session.
Yeah.
After he got divorced.
And then I'll you more.
I'm working on.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, let's make some happy there. And I would have to. I know they can reach out.
Oh, yeah.
You're. Great.